Hi, my name is Njawulo Mwamba. In this video, I'm going to take you through my personal life experiences that have impacted the way I deal with planned change. These changes, I've put them in 3 stages. Then the first stage is when I was in my teens, and then the second stage was when I was in my youth, and then last but not least, in my current adult life. I then went further to categorize these changes into 2 categories. Then the first category being unplanned changes, and the second category, planned changes. What characterizes unplanned changes? Unplanned changes include, among others, natural disasters that you cannot plan for, or loss of a family member, things that just happen suddenly that you're not expecting, that you have to comply with, or you have to adhere to it. And then coming to the second one, which is plan change. These are changes that you put much more effort, put much more planning into it. You put resources in, you consult a lot of people. So these are changes that everybody is aware of, and you need to implement them. And then moving to the first change that happened in my life, which was in my teen. I was very young at the time. I was still in my early teens. I was 15 at the time. And then this was when the family lost my father. And my father, who was the sole provider, and he was our pillar of strength. He was my superhero. So there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of sadness, there was a lot of chaos that was happening at the time. But at the end of the day, there's a change that I had to face head on. There's a change that I needed to embrace, and there's a change that I needed to overcome. So one will ask, what are the lessons that I learned from that particular change at a very young age? So number one for me was that one has to be adaptable and flexible enough to be able to deal with that particular change. So as you will know, that this was very much unplanned, and it was very much unexpected. So I had to adapt quickly and also be agile enough to deal with this particular change in my life. And then number two is that I needed to be resilient. You need to build up the muscle to be resilient in order to be able to deal with the challenge. And then being resilient helps you to stay calm and also to stay focused on overcoming that particular change. Number three, it was communication. So communication was the fact that we needed to consult within the family, we needed to consult with everyone who was impacted by this particular change. So communication was very much important in this regard. And then number four, it was the fact that you needed to seek support. It is important to seek support from people who have already been through this particular situation, and they can help you to navigate through this process, so that you can know what to do and what not to do in that particular point in time. And then with every change, there's opportunity. So for me, there was an opportunity for me to grow as an individual, because I had to change the way I live my life, because there's going to be adjustment in my life. I had to change the way I do things, and I had to change the way I was conducting myself as a whole. So those are the lessons that I learned from that particular unplanned change. And then moving along to the planned changes. So this planned changes, as I've already said, is a change that you plan for. You put much more resources, be it financial or be it any other resource that might be required for you. At that time, we didn't have an institution of higher learning in my province, which is the province of Mpumalanga, that could also meet the demand of students that were produced at the time. So I had to leave my home province of Mpumalanga and go to the province of KwaZulu-Natal. So it was a province that had a different language, different cultures, it had different races. So for me, that was a huge change. In addition to that, that was the first time for me staying by myself and then doing things by myself, because all my life I've been staying with my parents, and then until my father passed on. So I stayed with my mom and my other sister. So now for the very first time, I had to do things by myself, and I had to stay by myself. So that was a change that took place in my youth. And then the second change that took place was when I decided to get married. Obviously, after finishing my studies, I got a job, and then I started working, and then I felt it was a time for me to take the next step in my life, which was to get married. So these are the 2 changes that I've grouped together under planned changes, because the changes that I had planned for. These are changes that I've put some thought into it, and then these are changes that I had put resource into it, so that I can be able to navigate through this particular point in time. So what I've learned from these 2 changes in my life. Number one, was the fact that you need to prepare. And then in terms of preparing, you have to do some research. And then number two, you have to put some resources into it, and resources can vary. And then if there's budget that is gonna be needed, then I needed to plan for that, and then also get to understand the next step, what it means to me in terms of moving to the next step in my life. And then number two, open and clear communication. It is important that you continuously communicate with the people that are going to be impacted by this particular change. So in this change, as I was getting married, so I had to make sure that I constantly communicate with my partner so that they get to understand that how the change is going to impact them, and then so that we're also on the wavelength. And then number three, this also ties into what I've just said, which is stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders are people who've got the direct interest in the success of that particular change. So as you'll imagine, if you're getting married, there's a lot of engagement that takes place. There's a lot of negotiation. There's also engaging with my partner. It is also having to deal with pastors and the like. So there was a lot of consultation. There's a lot of engagement in terms of the stakeholders that are involved in this particular initiative. And then number four, what was important was that leadership. Leadership is very much important because it builds up momentum for the particular change. You also have to make sure that people understand the impact of the change, and then how they can contribute towards making this a success. So for me, providing leadership at this particular point in time, for me, was one of the key things that made it easy for me to transition in this particular change. And then also support for the people that are involved in this particular. Because sometimes people will resist change not necessarily because they don't want to change, but because they don't understand why they have to do it. They don't feel they are involved in the part of the decision making. They don't feel part of the transition or the change process. So supporting the people that are supposed to implement the change, for me, was very much key. So I had to support my future wife at the time in terms of emotional support, and then also trying to make her feel at ease to say it's a big step, but it's something that is worthwhile at the end of the day. And last but not least, the lesson that I learned was that it is important to make sure that your values stay aligned. So people can easily accept change or not resist change if their values are aligned. If you want to implement a change that goes against, for example, their Christian beliefs or their faith, they're not gonna take in or easily embrace that particular change. So for me, at making sure that our values are aligned is a good point. So I think these are values that can be implemented by organization. Thank you.